This is Lisa Loeb, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
For music allies, sexual violence, NDAs, and the music industry.
From Rolling Stone, Ticketmaster and Live Nation should be broken up, DOJ says in new lawsuit. We'll hear from both sides.
And for music business worldwide, Spotify's battle with songwriters and music publishers is getting complicated. Here's a recap. Jay, complicated in the music business? What?
Yeah, crazy.
Doesn't seem right. But anyway, we're going to talk about all of these things. We're glad you're here. Jay and I are hitting the button to start right now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. 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 Standing by. Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
That song, Jay. Of course, that is the live version of Jane Says, playing at the first Lollapalooza. And out now is In Lala, the story of Lollapalooza, a 3-part docuseries now streaming on Paramount+. The annual Destination Music Festival has its 3 decades plus history, told by those who birthed it, built it, played it, and covered it.
3 decades, and we'll talk about that in a second. And if you don't know anything about Lollapalooza, you know Perry Farrell. You know, he had a lot to do with it as a producer. Featured interview. The former Jane's Addiction frontman drives the narrative in Lala, which includes commentary from musicians like Flea, Trent Reznor, Donita Sparks from L7, Ice-T, Tom Morello. People on the business side of Lollapalooza, music journalists, and media personalities who covered the event.
It was a fun time and very, well, of course, it was unique at the time for the States, but these festivals had been held in Europe, which was certainly the inspiration for it. And like I've mentioned to you a couple times on the podcast, before I'd even started working at Giant Records for Irving Azoff, I was still finishing up my former job as an assistant at Warner Brothers Records, and I get a call from Irving's office, and he said he wants me to go with him down to Irvine Meadows, which he partially or owned at the time. And let me tell you, when you go to a concert with the guy who owns the venue, It's kind of cool, actually, and great day. And I went to 2 of the 3 days. The first, in fact, I was in the mobile truck when this Jane Says recording was happening, and big stuff. And by the way, the upcoming Lollapalooza is in Grant Park in Chicago this summer, August 1st through the 4th. Should be a great show, like they all are.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this documentary. And as you said, it's a 3-part docuseries on Paramount Plus. And if you missed it, the title is In Lala, the Story of Lollapalooza.
But we also mentioned there's some other great documentaries out right now. On HBO, you can go see Stax, Soulsville, USA. That's a story about the Stax label. Yeah. I can't wait on that one, too. And then, of course, there's a Beach Boys documentary on Disney+. And then the original Let It Be movie from the Beatles is now on Disney+ as well, which, of course, had been unavailable for decades.
Yeah.
So
I watched it the other day, and I think they used some sort of technology to clean it up because it looked much better than any previous version I'd seen.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
So we have a really special Your Morning Coffee podcast episode that we're dropping soon. And I'm really excited to share this with our listeners. It's with Mark Mulligan and Tatiana Cirasano from Media. They're going to break down their new report, which is the Media Research 2024 to 2031 Global Music Forecasts, Rise of the Global South. And as you know, their projections are spot on. And this report was written by Mark and Tatiana with Perry Gresham.
Yeah, so the 2024 edition of Media's Global Music Forecast captures a market at a crossroads. With limited streaming user growth remaining in the West, revenue growth will be fueled by price rises and ARPU increases, as well as expansion in emerging markets, albeit at lower ARPU. Bifurcation represents a shift in the established order, while growth in the creative, fandom-led non-DSP streaming forking away from consumption-led DSP streaming. Meanwhile, the physical resurgence will continue, but we'll have to reckon with new emerging avenues for fan engagement. It is really a fascinating report.
Right, and it's a big report. It's comprehensive. It's 70 plus pages, and then it comes with a 40 plus page data set for 45 countries and regions. You know, so they include these Excel spreadsheets. The report and the data set are available as part of a Media subscription and for purchase on the Media Report store.
Yeah, and I got to say, you know, whenever we speak with folks like this from Media, and it was such a pleasure, I am in awe of all of the work that goes into these reports and just the number crunching and the data sets and the models and all of this. And we touch on that a little bit in the conversation, but you know your lane. And I know a few things about the music business, but that stuff I just don't know. And it's fascinating. And I'm in awe of all the work that goes into it.
Yeah, me too. And what I love about it is they're just genuinely cool people and music fans, and we talk about that a little bit during the interview. But they take a lot of this complex, you know, multi-regression analysis and all of these things, and they make it so knuckleheads like us can understand it. They'll just they spell it out like, this is what this means, and here are our projections, and their projections have been very good over the last 10 years.
For sure.
Also coming up, I'm going to attend Indie Week, you know, A2IM's Indie Week, which is coming up, and that's the American Association of Independent Music. That's a trade association that represents indie record labels in the U.S. That was founded in 2005, Richard Burgess.
Yeah, it's created by independents for independents. A2IM Indie Week is a 3-day conference uniquely tailored to the needs of the independent music community in the United States.
Held annually in New York City, A2IM Indie Week is the largest gathering of the independent music community, drawing labels, distributors, DSPs, agencies, everyone. You can expect 3 days of insightful discussions and fruitful networking, which is my favorite part, and I will report back after.
I bet you're going to have a good time, Jay. I'm just saying. I think you're going to have a good time. Indeed. How about this from TechCrunch? TikTok tests 60-minute video uploads as it continues to take on YouTube. They're testing the ability for users to upload 60-minute videos, the company confirmed to TechCrunch just this last Thursday.
Right. And this feature is really limited to a select group of users in select markets. So it's not rolled out everywhere. And TikTok says it doesn't have any immediate plans to make the feature available widely. But you and I were talking about this earlier. This is an interesting move. Let's just assume that they don't get banned in the US. And the ability to sort of compete with YouTube, this will be interesting.
Very interesting. By the way, there was also a fantastic piece by Hunter Giles for Music Business Worldwide, Steve Albini and the Problem with Royalty-Based Record Deals. He breaks down the pros and cons of profit share deals versus royalty-based deals. And man, really interesting. All of the numbers, all of the stuff in there. Great piece.
Yeah, it really is. Hunter is a co-founder of Infinite Catalog, a royalty accounting software and services company. In his Music Business Worldwide piece, he really pays tribute to Steve Albini's infamous article, The Problem with Music, back in 1993. So let's listen into my conversation with Hunter Giles from Infinite Catalog. Hunter, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay.
Tell us a little bit about your company, Infinite Catalog. What do you guys do?
Sure. So Infinite Catalog, we are a royalty accounting software and service company. So we help record labels, publishers, artists, producers, and other kind of creator businesses figure out how much money they're making, and most importantly, how much they owe other people. And yeah, we do that in a very unique way. We are a very different new breed of royalty software that is much more collaborative with the artists and the payees and anybody else who works at the catalog. And it makes a big difference. We're very focused on transparency and making royalties simpler and easier and understandable so that catalogs can grow better together with their artists.
So you wrote this piece in Music Business Worldwide. The headline was Steve Albini and the Problem with the Royalty-Based Record Deals. And you begin it by paying tribute to Steve Albini, that infamous expose he wrote, The Problem with Music, back in 1993. He didn't mention profit share deals in The Problem with Music or compare the two, the same scenario, but you did. Tell us a little bit about that.
That Steve Albini piece was quite literally the original inspiration for Infinite Catalog. It was the very first blog post on our blog, and something that hit me really hard when I first read it, probably sometime around 2008. And yeah, it just got me very obsessive about oh right, these record deals, everybody seems to hate them. How does the money actually break down? And here was somebody who literally just put it in plain English in an article that made it much easier to understand. And yeah, it blew me away at the time because at the time, I did not know how major label style or royalty base, as they are generically known, because it's not just major labels that do them, but yeah, I didn't know how those deals worked yet. I only knew how profit share deals worked because I had just started my own little DIY indie label. Because I had heard that, you just do these 50-50 deals where, you front the money and then you try to make it back and you split the profits 50-50 with the artist. And, at the time that seemed very simple and fair, and sure, I can keep track of that income, no problem. And yeah, so the original Steve Albini piece was just like a real eye opener to how it worked on the other side and how it had traditionally worked for decades in the music industry, and not these net profit deals that indie labels had, been doing since the 80s, I think. But yeah, I mean, Steve's piece did not talk about net profit deals because, of course, if you're trying to make a splash, you don't qualify every little thing that you're saying. You go for the jugular. And Steve was so good at that. I'm not quite as hard nosed as Steve, and so I do, you know, make some qualifications in my piece around, like, you know, not everybody who hands out royalty-based deals are evil, and not everybody who does profit share deals are saints. It's certainly not the case. So mine probably lacks some of the pizzazz of Steve's, but yeah, it never occurred to me to just take that same scenario that he lays out so clearly in the major label deal in his piece and just say, what would that look like? What would that have looked like in a profit share scenario instead? And it had not occurred to me to try to do that until he died last week, and I reread the piece. And, you know, now I have this royalty accounting company, and we've helped, you know, put together thousands or probably tens of thousands of royalty statements, both royalty based and profit share, because our software can handle both. And we do have customers that use royalty based deals, and they're good people, all of them, because they're, you know, trying to get the artist paid. But yeah, but the challenge with royalty based deals is that they aren't transparent. They are inherently opaque, because they actually create two different sets of books. You know, the income that is tracked on a royalty based deal is not the income that the record label actually receives. So there is no way for the artist to actually know how much the label made versus how much they made. They only see their balance, which is a separate thing from the income that the label is making. And I go into greater depth in the piece. But in royalty, in profit share deals, it's the exact opposite. Everything is one pool, and the artist can very clearly see, okay, the label made this, and I made this, and it's much easier. So yeah, I was very happy to put those numbers together in the profit share scenario, and was very kind of curious how it would shake out. And sure enough, it's a much better deal for the artist when they're getting 50% of the net profits versus, you know, 18% of the royalty base.
Yeah. So where can people learn more about you and Infinite Catalog?
Definitely infinitecatalog.com is the best place to go. And especially if you are a record label or a publisher or a catalog of any kind, and you want to know how much money you're making. Most people don't. And yeah, and you can find me on LinkedIn, or yeah, probably LinkedIn is the only real social media that I actually look at these days. So, so yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jay.
Yeah, great piece and fascinating. You know, when you break down the numbers, it's really just interesting to see the numbers in that piece. So definitely check it out. Good interview there, Jay.
Thanks.
And let's thank our sponsors, Jay. What do you say? We are so lucky every week to have the group of sponsors. We
sure
have
are.
Big thanks to our good friends over at Bandzoogle. For over 20 years, Bandzoogle has made it easy to build a stunning website and online store for your music. Now they've added a brand new EPK plan so that musicians can create a professional single-page electronic press kit in minutes. All the features you need to design an EPK are already built in, including fully customizable templates, preset EPK page layouts, music players, images, text bio, and video embeds, a gig calendar and press quotes, and access to Bandzoogle's award-winning support team 7 days a week. The new EPK plan starts at just $6.95 a month, and your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com to try it free for 30 days. Then use the promo code MorningCoffeeEPK, that's all one word, to get 10% off the first year of the new EPK plan subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code MorningCoffeeEPK.
Yes, sir. And a huge thank you to Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, Bands in Town. Over 80 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform connecting over 590,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Yeah, and finally, the Music Business Association, the Music Biz 2024 conference, which just happened. It was in Nashville. It was wonderful. They're going to be in Atlanta next year, by the way. And that conference creates the rooms in which important conversations that shape the future of the industry take place. Representing more than 90% of the music industry at large, the Music Business Association provides a trusted forum where ideas and collaborations can flourish.
And also want to give a special shout out to Billboard Pro. Want to know what everyone in the music business is talking about? Get in the know with Billboard Pro. Billboard is offering your music coffee, your morning coffee, your music coffee. What am I saying, Jay? Your morning coffee readers a special 50% discount off the price of your subscription. Click on the link in your morning coffee newsletter, and I think I'll even put it in this week's edition of the podcast. And that is really a secret weapon of ours, isn't it, Jay?
Absolutely.
Knowing what's going on.
Yeah, and it sure is. Oh, and thanks again to our amazing sponsors, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. We couldn't do this without you.
No, you could not. But hey, and every week I get to hang out with the dude, Mr. J. Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
And every week I get to talk music and talk shop with my friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group.
Indeed. So let's jump into the stories, Jay. I have marbles in my mouth.
Oh, me
today.
too.
I don't know what it is.
It's like falling down stairs.
I know, exactly. Well, the first one, a very important story. This is from Music Ally. Sexual violence, NDAs, and the music industry. That's from Joe Sparrow. For decades, the music industry has condoned, perpetuated, and often marketed a culture of sexual abuse of women and underage girls. Thousands of artists, executives, and shareholders have made billions of dollars in profit while engaging in and or covering up criminal sexual behavior. Women who spoke to Vice as part of a 2018 investigation into sexual misconduct within the music industry told stories of powerful men who took advantage of their positions and explained the risks inherent in speaking out against them. Boy, powerful.
Yeah, this was from a podcast, the Music Ally podcast with Joe Sparrow, which I never miss. It's really good. You know, they detailed an industry that's, beset by financial pressure and fierce competition, increasingly reliant on a freelance workforce vulnerable to gaps in labor protections. The report found that the problem of sexual misconduct in the music industry doesn't stem from any one of these factors alone. It's a perfect storm that clears a path for sexual abuse to continue unabated.
The music industry has followed a playbook for dealing with sexual abuse that shields predators, including musicians, producers, managers, executives, and other behind-the-scenes players from liability. In many instances, victims of sexual assault at the hands of artists and industry professionals are silenced with ironclad NDAs, while powerful male executives are protected against a public airing of allegations against them.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement, and it prevents you from telling what you saw, heard, or experienced. Survivors also face retaliation for coming forward, such as getting sued in court, demoted, fired, and or blacklisted from working within the industry altogether. Further, even in the wake of the #MeToo movement, fans and industry professionals have continued to support and elevate the careers of men who are accused of harassment, assault, and abuse.
So Caroline Heldman, PhD, and Samantha Maloney are co-founders of the Sound Off Coalition, which recently published a report that called out the scathing history and financial impact of decades of sexual abuse and cover-ups in the music industry.
Yeah, so in this latest episode of the Music Ally Focus podcast, Joe Sparrow spoke to both Caroline and Samantha about their work, the impact of the report, and what they describe as a pattern of covering up by big music companies, how they're using shareholder and political activism to try to make a difference, and the scale of their challenge.
So Heldman is unambiguous on the size of the task. She said the music industry, when it comes to sexual violence, is way behind other industries in terms of reforming. It's actually way behind Hollywood at this point. And she says the issue is endemic. What we found is that it wasn't just an issue with one artist or one label. It is across the board. It's systemic. It's a culture. Maloney agrees. She said they treat women like second-class citizens. They objectify us. There's such misogyny in this industry that is so baked in that it's so hard to change.
Wow. In their report, publicly available information on reported allegations of sexual abuse, harassment, and related misconduct involving well-known musicians and music industry executives is cataloged in detail. Amongst its key demands is a call for an end to the use of non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, that they say are used to silence survivors. And by the way, there's a link to the entire report in your morning coffee with this story.
Right. So women are often motivated to not speak out, they explain. They say, Heldman says, most women actually never come forward because it's just such a common experience in the industry that it's normalized. So they're not coming forward because it's a combination of either fear of the repercussions, they see what happens to other women who do come forward, or it's so normal that they think, well, if I come forward, what difference would it make?
Heldman and Maloney stressed that the deep-rooted nature of the issues within the music industry, Maloney is clear. The music industry is absolutely a boys' club that is amplifying patriarchy. The report covers 70 years. It's gone unchecked the entire time.
Wow. Despite all of this, Heldman and Maloney are positive about the headway they are making and explain the paths they are taking. They said, we are pushing for the Senate to investigate the cover-ups and the corruption in the industry. What the Senate can do is bring the CEOs of these big companies before them and interrogate them as to why this cover-up has been happening and what they can plan to do to change that. We're pushing for shareholder activism, we're pushing for consumer activism, and we're also pushing for litigation. Lots of cases coming forward rather than just one or two at a time. It's about hitting them where it actually hurts. The pocketbook.
Right. And this report lists the accused abusers, and they break it down by 1, abuse by artists and musicians, and number 2, abuse by producers, executives, and other industry figures. You need to listen to this important interview. It's on Music Ally. It's their Music Ally Focus podcast with Joe Sparrow. It's fantastic. See the link in the show notes. Check out your morning coffee for that complete report.
Yeah, powerful stuff and very important.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hopefully we can really start making a difference. This next story, Jay, it's from Rolling Stone. Ticketmaster and Live Nation should be broken up, the Department of Justice says in new lawsuit. The suit comes more than 2 years after the Justice Department started its investigation into the concert giant. They are calling for concert and ticketing giant Live Nation to be broken up, a remarkable claim in an antitrust lawsuit the department filed in New York Thursday morning. The DOJ is joined by 29 states as well as the District of Columbia.
Yeah, they said that we are not here today because Live Nation, Ticketmaster's conduct is inconvenient or frustrating. We're here because of the alleged conduct and that it is anti-competitive and illegal, Attorney General Merrick Garland said during a press conference last Thursday. We allege that Live Nation has illegally monopolized markets across the live concert industry in the United States far too long, and it's time to break it up.
So Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Cantor said in a statement on Thursday that the live music industry in America is broken because Live Nation Ticketmaster has an illegal monopoly. Our antitrust lawsuit seeks to break up the Live Nation Ticketmaster monopoly, which will restore competition to the benefit of fans and artists alike, he said.
Yeah, a DOJ suit has been one of the most anticipated potential legal actions in the live music industry since the regulators investigated, first back in 2022. Live Nation and Ticketmaster have faced significant scrutiny from fans, competing concert and ticketing companies, and regulators since the two companies merged in 2010. While, critics are saying that the merger has made it difficult for other companies to compete in the music space.
So the DOJ itself pointed to several key areas in the complaint that the department said was indicative of the monopoly power Live Nation has maintained since the merger. It alleged that Ticketmaster used its exclusivity agreements with concert venues to block competing companies and lock down venues for long periods of time and, in quotation marks, reduce competitive pressure.
Right. The Justice Department also claimed Live Nation threatened venues, working with rival companies with losing the promoter's concerts. Sometimes Live Nation is bold and communicates this threat directly, the DOJ said. Other times, the expression of the threat may be implicit, but the meaning is self-evident. But, in the words of Ricky Warwick, there are three sides to every story, yours, mine, and the truth.
Right. So if we break down the Department of Justice lawsuit, this is the Live Nation, here are a few highlights. The Department of Justice and a group of state attorneys generals have now filed the much anticipated antitrust suit against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. This follows intense pressure on the Department of Justice to file a lawsuit and a long-term lobbying campaign from rivals trying to limit competition and ticket brokers seeking government protection for their business model of scooping up concert tickets and jacking up the price.
Right. The complaint, and even more so the press conference announcing that complaint, they attempt to portray Live Nation and Ticketmaster as the cause of fan frustration with the live entertainment industry, despite admitting that the face values of tickets are typically set or approved by artists, and that's a fact that's frequently missed. It blames concert promoters and ticketing companies, neither of which control ticket prices for high ticket prices.
Right. So Live Nation also says it ignores everything that is actually responsible for higher ticket prices, from rising production costs to artist popularity to 24/7 online ticket scalping that reveals the public's willingness to pay for more than primary ticket prices. It blames Live Nation and Ticketmaster for high service charges and just the fact that there are fees, but ignore that Ticketmaster retains only a modest portion of those fees. In fact, primary ticketing is one of the least expensive digital distributions in the economy. In light of this data, Assistant Attorney General Cantor's dodge of a reporter's question about how much Ticketmaster contributes to fees, they say, was telling.
Yeah, they also go on to say that it's also absurd to claim that Live Nation and Ticketmaster wield monopoly power. The defining feature of a monopolist is monopoly profits derived from monopoly pricing. Live Nation in no way fits this profile. Service charges on Ticketmaster are no higher than SeatGeek, Access, or other primary ticketing sites, and frequently lower. In fact, when Ticketmaster loses a venue to SeatGeek, service charges usually go up substantially. And even accounting for sponsorship and advertising business that helps keep ticket prices down, Live Nation's overall net profit margins on the low end of a profitable S&P 500 company.
So the trend lines confirm Live Nation's lack of market power. Every year, competition in the industry drives Live Nation to earn lower take rates from both concert promotion and ticketing. The company is profitable and growing because it helps grow the industry, not because it has market power that squeezes more profit from less output.
Right. And you'll remember the Obama administration allowed Live Nation and Ticketmaster to merge in 2010. And in defending that position, acknowledged that there was no legal basis for challenging the vertical aspects of the merger, specifically allowing a large concert promoter to combine with a large ticketing company. In one filing, it said that it had, quote, determined that it could not prove that the vertical integration resulting from the merger would significantly harm competition in the concert promotion market. There's no factual basis for concluding otherwise today.
So they say, these are the concluding thoughts. They say Live Nation is in the business of bringing the joy of live entertainment to people, and to do that and connecting artists to fans and supporting a productive live entertainment ecosystem. That is what we do better than anyone else, and what we will continue to do as we challenge this lawsuit. In the ticketing marketplace, is the ticketing marketplace confusing to consumers? Yes, it certainly is, and we have been very clear in the halls of Congress and at the DOJ that we favor genuine reforms that would actually help fans get tickets at the price the artist has set for them to pay.
Yeah, fans want to see the bands and sport teams they love, and it infuriates them that tickets sell out on Ticketmaster and are then available on hundreds of secondary online sites at double or triple the cost. But the government, they've chosen to do nothing about this. Instead, it has filed a case which sort of misleads the public into thinking that the ticket prices will be lower if something is done about Live Nation and Ticketmaster. But the Department of Justice is not helping consumers with their actual problems. This is why the government has never been less popular, because they pretend they're fixing your problems, then instead they're pandering to a narrow set of political interests. So for additional facts, and download some graphics, visit livenationentertainment.com/facts. You can read the full lawsuit from Rolling Stone, and there's a link in your morning coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting stuff. And it's good to hear both sides, obviously, but
right.
We shall continue to see where this goes, because
yes,
it's gonna keep going. Jay, the next story, Spotify's battle with songwriters and music publishers is getting complicated. But here's a recap, and this is from Music Business Worldwide, a great story. So what's happened? The music publishing company gathered in London today, this was last week, to celebrate songs and songwriters at the annual Ivors Award.
Right. This year's event was an extra special one, with Bruce Springsteen, becoming the first international songwriter in the Ivors Academy 80-year history to be awarded its highest honor, which is the fellowship. The boss has now joined an elite group of songwriting legends who have received the fellowship, including Sir Paul McCartney, Kate Bush, Joan Armatrading, and Sting.
Wow. Bernie Taupin, meanwhile, is known for his successful songwriting partnership with Sir Elton John, of course, was recognized with the Ivor Novello Outstanding Contribution to British Music. As always, the mood in music publisher and songwriter circles in the days leading up to the Ivors was celebratory. But one unfortunate topic of discussion this week just couldn't be avoided: the ongoing feud between U.S. music publishers and the world's largest subscription music service, Spotify.
Their dispute stems from Spotify's controversial decision to reclassify its premium tiers as quote-unquote bundles. We've been talking about this a lot lately. So by combining music and audiobooks, which has resulted in Spotify paying a lower mechanical royalty rate in the U.S. to publishers and songwriters that standalone music subscription services. That's exactly what that means. How that happened, who has said what so far, and what could happen next. Let's dig into it.
All right, so here's the backstory. To explain exactly how Spotify has been able to pull off its controversial bundle trick, we need to rewind the clock back to 2022. In August of that year, the United States Copyright Royalty Board, that's the CRB, accepted a near music industry-wide settlement to improve songwriters' streaming royalty rates in the U.S. from January 1st of 2023.
That's right. The settlement, known as Phono Records 4 or CRB 4, we talk about this a lot, saw that songwriters and music publishers paid a headline rate of 15.35% of a given interactive streaming service's U.S. revenue by 2027. The rate that is being phased in, and Mike will dig into that, what that means in a second, the rate being phased in because Phono Records 4 covers a 5-year period between 2023 and 2027.
Right. So in 2023, that's starting on January 1st, songwriters and music publishers were able to be paid a headline rate of 15.1% of a U.S. services revenue. In 2024, this got increased to 15.2%. In 2025, it will be increased to 15.25%. In 2026, it will increase to 15.3%. And in 2027, it will reach 15.35%. The deal also included a number of changes to other components of the rate, including increases to the per prescriber minimums and the total content costs, that's the TCC calculations, which reflect the rates that services pay to record labels.
That same 2022 legal settlement, and it's called Phono Records 4, also included a provision about how streaming services treat bundles. More specifically, music publishers and music streaming services agreed that bundled services in the United States are permitted to pay a lower mechanical royalty rate to publishers and songwriters than standalone music subscription services. So why has a provision in an agreement signed in 2022 suddenly resulted in less money for songwriters?
Right. So in April, Spotify announced that it now considers all of its premium plans to be bundles. That's because in October, Spotify started offering 15 hours worth of audiobooks with its premium plans for free. In other words, bundling access to audiobooks with its premium service.
Alongside that decision to classify its premium music services as bundles because of the added audiobooks element, Spotify has also been making moves to offer different types of subscription focused on the different types of content it offers. For example, the company launched a $9.99 per month standalone audiobook tier in March in the United States.
And on its Q1 earnings call back on April 23rd, Spotify co-founder and CEO Daniel Ek confirmed that a new music-only subscription tier is coming to the platform. By announcing that all of its premium plans are now being treated as bundles in the U.S., Spotify confirmed that the mechanical royalty rate it pays to songwriters and publishers for all of its premium services in the U.S. has been reduced because of that agreement it made with the music publishers about bundles back in 2022.
Oh, boy. So a Spotify spokesman said last month, quote, our industry partners are aware changes in our product portfolio mean that we are paying out in different ways based on the terms of the agreed to by both streaming services and publishers. Multiple DSPs have long paid a lower rate for bundles versus standalone music subscriptions, and our approach is consistent with that.
So what do publishers have to say about Spotify's little bundle trick? Music publishers are not happy. When Spotify first announced the reclassification of its premium services as bundles on April 18th, David Israelite, the president and CEO of the National Music Publishers Association, told Music Business Worldwide it appears Spotify has returned to attacking the very songwriters who make its business possible.
The NMPA represents prominent independent publishing companies in the United States, as well as major publishers, Sony Music Publishing, Universal Music Publishing Group, and Warner Chappell. Israelite added, quote, Spotify's attempt to radically reduce songwriter payments by reclassifying their music service as an audiobook bundle is a cynical and potentially unlawful move that ends our period of relative peace.
Yeah, he said, we will not stand for their perversion of the settlement we agreed upon in 2022 and are looking at all options. A week or so later, in an interview on the Music Business Worldwide podcast, that's on April 30th, Israelite confirmed that Spotify's action will likely end up in a legal conflict.
So far, the NMPA's three major publisher members haven't individually commented publicly on the dispute, but we got a bit of insight into what one of them thinks via a leaked letter a few days ago. Sony Music Publishing Chairman and CEO John Platt wrote in a letter to SMP songwriters and composers that their mechanical royalty payments from Spotify have been reduced by approximately 20%.
So he wrote, late last year, Spotify added an audiobook offering to its premium subscription tier here in the U.S. and across several other markets. Spotify then unilaterally reclassified their subscription product as a bundle. They claim this enables them to pay a reduced mechanical royalty rate, he wrote.
In effect, Spotify is taking the position that all U.S. subscribers are part of a bundle without choosing the bundle option. Platt added that SMP is working with the NMPA in considering all options to enforce the improved rates that were achieved in CRB 4.
So has the situation ended up in legal conflict? Yes, as suggested by the NMPA president and CEO David Israelite on the Music Business Worldwide podcast last month, Spotify's actions have indeed led to litigation, but it hasn't actually been brought by the NMPA itself. The NMPA did recently make a legal threat against Spotify, however, issuing a cease and desist letter to the music streaming service on behalf of NMPA members on Wednesday, that's May 15th, for allegedly hosting unlicensed lyrics on its platform.
Yeah, as we noted in our previous report, licenses for lyrics would typically be granted by the NMPA's members, including prominent indie publishers, plus the three major publishers, Sony, Warner Chappell, and Universal. A Spotify spokesperson called the NMPA's letter, quote, a press stunt filled with false and misleading claims. And it suggested that the music publisher's legal threat over alleged infringement on its platform was, quote, an attempt to deflect from the Phono 4 deal that the NMPA agreed to and celebrated back in 2022.
Spotify's spokesperson was, of course, referring to the controversy that continues to swirl in the publishing business over the streaming platform's decision to reclassify its premium tiers as bundles. Then, May 16th, the U.S.-based Mechanical Licensing Collective, that's the MLC, sued Spotify for allegedly underpaying royalties to songwriters and publishers as a result of its reclassifying its premium service, again, as bundles.
Right. The MLC claims in its lawsuit on March 1st, 2024, without advance notice to the MLC, Spotify unilaterally and unlawfully decided to reduce the service provider revenue reported to the MLC for premium by almost 50%. It argues that Spotify did so by improperly characterizing the service as a different type of subscription offering and underpaying royalties. Even though there's been no change to the premium plan and no corresponding reduction to the revenues that Spotify generates from its tens of millions of premium subscribers.
So you may ask, why is the MLC specifically suing Spotify? Well, the MLC is the nonprofit organization designated by the U.S. Copyright Office to ensure that music streaming services like Spotify pay the mechanical royalties they owe to songwriters and music publishers. The MLC, established by the landmark Music Modernization Act back in 2018, is the sole entity authorized to develop and administer a mechanical licensing system.
Yeah, the organization argued in its lawsuit against Spotify, which you can read in full in this article in your morning coffee. Spotify's assertion that premium is now a bundled subscription offering is directly at odds with Section 115 regulations that the MLC has primary responsibility for interpreting and applying.
So here's the MLC lawsuit filed against Spotify. The Section 115 rules cited by the MLC in the lawsuit refer to the compulsory license in the U.S., also known as the 115 license, and in parentheses, because it is stipulated under Section 115 of the Copyright Act, which allows eligible digital services to use copyrighted music for a set fee without having to negotiate directly with rights holders.
Right. The blanket license covers the reproduction and distribution of non-dramatic compositions, not sound recordings. Recorded music rights holders, aka the record labels, are able to negotiate directly with digital service providers. On May 21st, the NMPA called on Congress to update the copyright law in the United States to allow publishers to negotiate in a free market, just like record labels.
So according to a letter written by NMPA's president and CEO, this legislative proposal would solve the continued abuse of the statutory system by digital services, such as Spotify, who, David Israelite said, has found a new way to game the statutory rate system to underpay rights holders by hundreds of millions in royalties.
So are streaming services open to the NMPA's quote-unquote free market negotiation proposal to Congress? Apparently not. DEMA, the U.S. organization that represents services like Spotify, Amazon, and Pandora, they issued a statement from its president and CEO, Graham Davies, on Tuesday last week, denouncing the proposal. Graham Davies, we should point out, was previously the head of a trade body representing UK songwriters and joined DEMA as its new boss this past fall.
So according to Davies, the music industry as a whole, particularly publishers, songwriters, and streaming services, depend on the Section 115 blanket license established by the Music Modernization Act, the MMA, to operate. He added, "It is disappointing that the NMPA would propose dismantling the MMA in this way. The statutory blanket license is essential to the Music Modernization Act's very structure. Without it, and crucially, the blanket coverage that it provides, the MMA falls apart, and the industry will revert to their inefficient and fragmented licensing regime that existed before the MMA became law."
Yeah, the MMA was necessary when it was signed into law and today underpins the mechanical licensing system. DEMA remains committed to the MMA, a landmark piece of legislation that was supported by every corner of the music industry and passed both chambers of Congress unanimously just over 5 years ago. So one final thought, it would be remiss of us not to point out that this is not Spotify's first major dispute with songwriters and publishers in the United States.
No, it is not. Back in 2019, the U.S. Copyright Royalty Board, that of course is the CRB, ruled that Spotify and other streaming services had to increase the headline mechanical royalty rates they paid publishers and songwriters in the U.S. for the period covering 2018 to 2022. That decision from the CRB in the so-called CRB3 process followed a lobbying campaign from the NMPA on behalf of songwriters and publishers.
Yeah, but Spotify and Amazon subsequently appealed that CRB3 ruling, attempting to drive down the mechanical royalty rate they paid songwriters under U.S. law. The CRB ultimately told the streaming services that they must increase their rate. Spotify has launched various initiatives in an attempt to improve the visibility of songwriters on the platform and perhaps its relationship with them generally. For example, the Songwriters Hub on Spotify launched in 2020 and the expansion of its suite of songwriting promotional tools back in September.
But Spotify's latest move has done little to get into the songwriting and publishing community's good books, as the Music Business Worldwide says. Just last week, for example, when we called an industry leader in the global music publishing business to discuss the NMPA's legal threat and the publishing business's current relationship with Spotify in general, this person told us, or in this case, Music Business Worldwide, Spotify thinks it's so clever looking for legal loopholes to cut songwriter pay. Sometimes when you are too clever, it blows up in your face.
Yeah, that same executive added that the bundling move is low, even for Spotify. And this is always their move, though, acting like they're friends with songwriters while knifing them in the back. Ouch. The opportunity for positive PR hasn't been missed by some rival streaming services either. Earlier today, Leor Cohen, the global head of music at YouTube, voiced his platform's support for songwriters ahead of the Ivers.
Right. So as Music Business Worldwide says, this is a fast-moving story, and the publishing community in the United States will be following the news closely to find out how the lawsuit filed by the MLC against Spotify progresses. A key concern about the dispute is that if Spotify were to win the lawsuit filed by the MLC, it would set a dangerous precedent whereby other streaming services might make changes to their own subscription/bundle offerings in the U.S. that could impact the royalties they pay to songwriters and publishers.
A Spotify spokesperson told Music Business Worldwide in a statement last week that they, quote, look forward to a swift resolution of this matter, end quote, and that the lawsuit concerns terms that publishers and streaming services agreed to and celebrated years ago under the Phono 4 agreement. They added, quote, bundles were a critical component of that settlement, and multiple DSPs include bundles as part of their mix of subscription offerings.
Spotify's spokesperson also repeated in slightly different words the company's claim made last month when it confirmed the bundle/mechanical royalties change. That globally, the company, in quotation marks, paid a record amount to publishers and societies in 2023 and is on track to pay out an even larger amount in 2024.
Spotify reports in its Loud and Clear economics report that it paid out nearly $4 billion globally to publishing rights holders, who represent the songwriters, over the last 2 years.
Right. So in closing, as the Ivors annual celebration of songs wraps up for another year, Music Business Worldwide says we'll leave you with Spotify's own words about songwriters. It's hard to overstate the importance of songwriters to the music-making process. They're responsible for the lyrics, melodies, beats, and chords that make up the songs we love.
They sure do, and they are the least remunerated, and that's been an ongoing theme, and it's certainly disappointing when it appears like Spotify is using this loophole in this agreement to pay them less in a time when they should be paid more, in my humble opinion.
And it does seem very just disingenuous, but again, this is, loopholes are loopholes, and any company's going to try to exploit a loophole that they find in a contract. Doesn't make it right, but I understand that concept. But this stuff is really inside baseball. There's a lot of acronyms going back and forth, but it's so important. And it also, as we've talked about many times on the show, it also sort of sends a spotlight on the weirdness of the business, in that this one thing is dictated by Congress for rates, and another thing is negotiated. And it is an odd juxtaposition in the industry of how these things work. So yeah, there you have it. On that note, Jay, we're going to wrap up the show. We do want to thank everyone for listening into the show, Jay. It does not go unnoticed by Jay and myself, and it's so nice when people reach out to us. We really, really appreciate it. If you enjoy the show, we'd certainly appreciate it if you tell one friend. And big thanks to Bandzoogle, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. So we hope you all have a great week. Jay and I will be back next time on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.